Title: Whatever Happened to Our Friends from Faro? Chapter 1, in which the reader is introduced to the players. Margaret had moved into the lower flat a year or two ago. She'd spent a good deal of her time planting out the garden and the pots on the terrace. Slowly getting over her split with Jack, she was much more sure of herself these days. She had cultivated a group of neighbours and friends who regularly had a drink or meal together. She enjoyed their company 2 or 3 times a week in warm weather. Her dog, named Bola, was a real hit with the friends. Everyone made a huge fuss of her, and Don, in particular, fed her tasty tidbits from a secret pocket in his jacket. Don was in his 80s now, and he was married to Glynis, who was a very happy, chatty person, much younger though, in her 60s. Then there was Cathy, who was Glaswegian, and her 4th husband, Roger, had a grey ponytail sprouting through the rear of his his baseball hat. He also, apparently, was very good at the guitar, and she a brilliant line dancer. Then, next, came Tina, whose face was always rigid in a sullen pose. She rarely smiled and hardly laughed at all, but she was married to George, which might have accounted for her less than happy outlook. He was a bit of a cave dweller. He leered at all the young women and happily told lewd jokes to anyone who would listen. Pauline was a single and very spry, elfin-like woman. She'd made a name for herself on the sights when she lived in a camper, especially with the Scandinavian visitors. Her main attraction being that she could cut hair, Scandi style, whatever that was. Finally, there were a couple of single men, Chris and Charlie, who usually joined these get-togethers. Charlie was ex-military, with a gammy leg, and a terrific amount of tales about Afghanistan. And then there was Chris, a salesperson and promoter for the Scottish whisky industry. He was rumoured to be extremely well off, and having no baggage of ex-wives, current wives, girlfriends, or children, Chris was regarded as a catch. Margaret secretly called him Mr. Beetroot on account of his very red face and nose. But at least his brain seems to work well, she said. We were all invited to a meal at Tina and George's villa around Christmas time. This was when the photograph was taken. We all squeezed up together and said cheese, grinning like Cheshire Cats for Britain. The meal was actually lovely, and Tina, although she didn't smile at all night, she had laid on a great spread, and there was an awful lot of Christmas cheer around. Roger had a contraption with him, though, which turned out to be a small amplifier and a microphone attached, and at various points he pressed it on one of the guests and encouraged them to sing along to the music tape, which some of them actually did. Cathy, as I recall, danced a rather good Highland fling at one point. It was all very impressive. I was watching Margaret and Chris, though. They seemed to be very friendly, huddled together, deep in conversation. Well, indeed, yes. That was the last time any of us saw them. At first, we just thought they'd got together in lust and were enjoying not coming out much. But eventually Charlie announced he'd been round to Chris's apartment. To undertake a recce, he said, since Chris wasn't answering Charlie's WhatsApp messages. The flat was found to be empty, and his large camper van wasn't there either. It was soon discovered that Margaret's flat, too, was empty, and there was no sign of Bola, the dog. It's been 2 years now, and not a word. They could have gone to Mars, for all we know. We all miss them, and I, for one, can't bear to look at that photograph of Tina's Christmas do. And the dog, Bola. I so miss the dog. Appearing in next week's magazine, Chapter 2, in which an investigatory plan of action is launched.